Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about how to calibrate a lunge, specifically in SCA rapier. This is something that also came up in that discussion about calibrated cuts, and how the same thing as when you're cutting, like trying to stop the blade and pull it, actually creates a whipping technique that drives the point harder. The common rationality of breaking the wrist as you throw thrust also is exactly the same scientific principles that are completely backwards, right? It doesn't make sense scientifically, because what a lot of you're trying to do is send your hand out and then pull your hand back in the same motion, and we don't work like that. The brain response time that it takes to actually do that is very, very complex. It has to be highly controlled. And most people do that by shortening their lunge and not leaning forwards, and they try to just sort of poke in and leap out at the same time in order to either control their calibration or whatever. So this is not how I lunge. It doesn't work when you're using a lot of historical technique and historical styles, because those are designed to essentially not stop and put your sword through your opponent. So, how do we calibrate that in sort of an SCA style where we're sparring and we're trying not to hurt each other? And the way I do this is sort of by using my shoulder more than my wrist. The idea is, what I want to do is to allow for my body momentum to carry in the same direction and not have to try to pull things backwards. So by softening at the shoulder after my extension and not the wrist, it allows for two things. Is one, if by breaking the wrist, when I lunge and break my wrist, you see that my sword is now no longer defending my body. So this is when I first started doing this lunge with the broken wrist, I get a lot of double kills, and I didn't like that. I didn't like getting double kills because I was trying to not hurt my opponent, and I knew that the technique worked, and I knew that I could get there. But the problem was, by breaking my wrist, I was now no longer putting myself in a defended position, and I didn't want to shorten my lunge to do that per se. So two things are important for me. One is that when I train lunging, is all of this has to go out first. The arm, the shoulder, the body has to reach, so that if I can hit somebody without lunging, great. If they start coming at me, right, then I know that I don't have to move in order to absorb them, and I'm just going to allow the same action here, the softening of the shoulder, to absorb them coming at me. So if I'm in this position, and as the pressure, and I'm going to simulate this by going forwards, but as the pressure hits the sword and my body keeps going forwards, right, this is where that break is, because what that does is now in that time, it allows me to stay more defended behind my sword and keep myself in the way of my opponent's actions. This works especially well on the outside. It would be harder to see at this angle, but as I lunge and I get out here, if I've caught my opponent's sword, when I break the wrist, again, everything has to pop up to do that. So I can allow myself just to step into this space. My sword stays exactly where it should be against their sword, and they can continue to go onto my sword as far as they want, and I can just spin out of that, right? So that if I'm doing this in fourth, lunge, and I just keep moving forwards, they can keep going. This will just keep, it'll just keep going that direction, right? Because my hand's relaxed, and everything will just spin right off. Eventually, they just fall off the sword. And I'm not really bending my blade. I'm not really impacting them. And that's what I found, is that the thing that hurts in rapier isn't this. You can do this to people all day long, right? I can stick my sword on somebody and push all day long. In fact, that's how, when I really want to calibrate a lunge, what I'll do is I'll lunge a hair short, stick my sword right on its target, and then push. And what people feel is they just feel the impact, and then the bend of the sword, or they feel the touch. The bend of the sword absorbs all the impact. It's these shots that really hurt. It's the ones that pop because the foot's still in the air, the body's behind it, right? Those are the ones that really hurt. Boom. That's going to hurt a lot more than that, and I can push on that all day long. So the idea is, I want to stick my sword out, let them run onto it, and then as they close, I'm just going to soften here at the shoulder. Allow this to stay nice and strong. I'm not going to try to pull back on my hand. You notice I'm not pulling back. My hand comes out. It stays exactly where it is, and I kind of just keep going forwards without moving the hand, as opposed to trying to use the hand to move back the last minute. I hope that makes sense. It's one of the things I train. Distance is really key to this, is just being able to know exactly how far to move your foot. Right? So I can control my calibration just by, all right, I'm here. I only have to move that far. I'm here. Now I have to move farther. I can control my calibration based off of the distance I'm at. If my body is extending before my feet. If your feet are extending before your body, or before your arm, especially, you end up here, and then your arm keeps going, and you end up there. And that's no good. That's where all the hard hits come from, is this. If you lunge this way, very rarely do you actually hit hard. You can control that a lot easier than you can control that. So those are things to look out for. Two different ways of calibrating. Trying to soften, you're using your body to soften the blow, not trying to react in split seconds, which is almost impossible to do. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to comment in the video, contact me online, find somebody who knows me, find me in person. I'm always happy to talk and explore these things on your own. I hope good fighting and have good calibration.